This is your old friend Shady O'Grady. 12 is a magical number. It's got anniversary written all over it. Thank you, Rising Stars, for a great first year.
Hey there, everyone. It's Todd Gillisey. This is part 2 of Rising Star 2's first birthday. On August 12th, 2020, I released Rising Star 2 for Mac and Windows on Steam. This was my first game that I had released on Steam. I also, a couple years before, I did release a little utility app on Steam, just kind of as a test for releasing things on Steam to see how it works and how easy it would be if I want to put a game out there. And honestly, I originally thought I was going to put Stranded Without a Phone on Steam, which is my mobile game, and didn't end up doing that, but maybe I will someday still. I've had a few requests. So today I'm going to talk about where Rising Star 2 started when it launched, and all of the kind of major updates and points of things along the way that have happened in the last year. When it launched, there were we had about 30 testers in the beta test group, and we've been doing PR for the game for a few months. So it was getting a little bit of attention, but for the most part, people didn't really seem to be latching onto it. And I wasn't sure that the PR company really got the game themselves. I wasn't sure if they really knew how to market this kind of game or how to talk about this kind of game, because it really is a niche game. It's a sim game, but it's also a role-playing game. It's about music, but it's not an arcade game. It's not Guitar Hero or Rock Band. So it's really different. A lot of people go into it having one expectation, turns out to be a whole different game. So when the game came out, the reviews, the official reviews, were not very positive. I think, like I said, people were expecting one thing and got something else, and honestly, the game still had a lot of room for improvement. And if it didn't, then it wouldn't have been continually improved for this last year. But a lot of the improvements came from ideas from players. A lot of players, the players that do play it, love it. It's kind of you either love it or hate it type of game. There's not much middle ground. But luckily, the supporters, the voices of the supporters quickly outweighed the voices of the haters. So I got a lot of encouragement to keep on working on it, and that's what I did. So I'm just going to talk about some of the key updates throughout the year. On the 12th, like I said, that launched. Now, for the first several days, a lot of players were, and all for Windows, all Windows players were, several Windows players were complaining that the game would just suddenly crash, and just immediately just quit for no reason. So I had players send me their player logs. The Unity automatically makes a log, and I was seeing things in there that looked like memory issues, and system problems, system level problems, memory issues, things that you don't really have direct control over in the game engine. So I was really concerned about that. I was like, man, what is going on here? Did some research on that, and found some web pages, some forum postings and stuff, people having similar issues. And it turned out it was like a facepalm moment that I was building the game for 32-bit Windows instead of 64-bit Windows. Now the Mac version automatically built for 64-bit. There weren't two options for that. But apparently in Unity there were two options, and the one called Windows was 32-bit, so you had to do Windows 64. So August 17th, the 64-bit builds for Windows came out and solved a lot of people's random crash problems. It seems like, I mean, that's only 5 days after release, according to this timeline. But it seemed like forever. It seemed like forever when there's a serious issue happening and you just spend all day for days trying to figure it out. It seems like it's forever, but that was only 5 days. On August 19th, only 2 days later, the CD cover designer was added. So now, well, the game launched with a banner designer. You could design your banner, which shows behind your band when you're playing gigs, and that was really cool. On the 19th, now you can design your CD covers, and when you put out CDs, they show up in the game. On the 21st, added options for exporting and deleting save games, and also external sound files for the soundtrack. Now, the original game had this in it also, where you could say, I want to use this folder of sound files as, you know, the soundtrack for the game. At launch, this didn't have it, and I added it on the 21st, so only 9 days after launch. Now, I spent a few weeks working on some balance issues. It was pretty obvious right away that, you know, the early game was too hard and the late game was too easy. Once you get over this certain hump in the game, then you just don't have to worry about money anymore. And it's still, for the most part, true. But it was really a bad problem at first. So a huge balance update came out on September 3rd. And it also added the ability to bank song ideas. You know, song ideas expire after 14 days. If you don't put them into a song, they just disappear. You forget them. But I thought that's a little bit harsh. If you have a really good song idea, but it doesn't fit, you don't want to use it yet, bank it. And that's what we used to call it when I was in a band in Mind Bomb. We would just write a riff, you know, come up with a cool riff or something, you know, a drum beat or whatever. We didn't know how we were going to use it yet, so we would just put it in the bank. That's what we called it. We would record it on our little tape recorder, put it in the bank, and a lot of those ended up in songs. And also on September 3rd, it added the ability to busk. So this was a new way for bands to earn some money early on, but not only that, but to increase playing skill by doing things instead of just leveling up with experience and adding points. Actually doing an activity to increase your skill. Free skill points. Everybody loves that. On September 7th, I expanded on that external soundtrack thing and added the ability to link external song files to your songs in the game. And then when you play those songs at gigs, it plays one of those songs. Now, that was also a feature that was in the original game. And I knew I wanted to have it in this one too, but the technology was different on this one than it was back then, so I just needed to figure out how to get that handled. And there was a problem for a long time, starting early on. People were reporting that they were getting a message that their van has become undrivable, and they had to pay $200 for a tow truck, even though their van seemed like it was perfectly normal. It didn't roll over, it didn't crash. They were just getting charged $200 at random. So this was something I needed to solve, and it took a long time. So I started working on that. And then on September 14th, I moved into a new house. And like I said in the last video, this seems like a pattern. Right after the game comes out, I buy a house and I move into a new house. And I decided to take 2 weeks off because my dad was visiting when we moved in. And so he was helping around the house, you know, getting things organized, doing projects, running wires through the ceiling and the walls and stuff for setting up surround sound and all kinds of stuff. So I'm just taking 2 weeks off, let the community know. And I was actually kind of surprised at how supportive the players were. We're just like, hey, take some time off. You know, you need a break. You know, we'll be here when you get back. Great. So that made me feel, you know, a lot better about taking the time off. On October 21st, I added the user-generated content system with the support for gallery art. So a lot of people were asking about being able to add their own artwork to the game, and because they had bought all of the art that was in the game, and there's quite a bit, but once you start making all that money in the game, you go buy all this art and it gives you inspiration so you can, write new songs and stuff, and end up buying all the art. So that was the first thing I added. Players can now add whatever art they want to the game, and share it with other players. So I made a kind of a generic user-generated content system that can be expanded in different directions for different types of content, and it started out with gallery art. On November 17th, I added the map editor to the user-generated content system. Now, this was something that I always wanted to do in Rising Star 2 also, because the original game also had the map editor where you could add cities, whatever, move them around. But it was a little different because this user-generated content system lets you share your content with other players. The original game didn't. It was just like if you wanted to add cities, you just added them, and it was only you that got them. So this was different. But people started loading up the system with all kinds of cities, and the quality varied. But I knew the quality would vary, which is why I added a rating system to the user-generated content system. And I don't know how much people use it, but it's there. And I also, at the same time, added Canada to the US map. Of course, the game started out only with the continental United States. And I looked at it and I thought, well, there's room for most of Canada here. I mean, only the southern part of Canada really has the cities. Anything really far north doesn't really have much. So I was able to get Canada in there. And this was kind of anticipating, expanding into new map areas also. On December 7th, I continued working on the false van rollover notification, and so it was still a problem at that point. Now, up to this point in December, I had a few players asking me if I had a Patreon, and I didn't. I never had a Patreon before, but people were interested in financially supporting the game beyond buying it, since all of the continued work on the game is included. Once you buy it, you get all the updates, including content. I said from the beginning that I wasn't going to put out expansion packs and things like that. It was just going to be, you buy it, you get the future. So some people wanted to support that financially. So I set up a Patreon by the suggestion of some of the players. And on December 20th, that went live. I have to say now currently, as I record this, there's 42 patrons, which is just amazing. Okay, in January of 2021, this year, I began working on a major update that introduced attitudes to the game and additional map regions, starting out with Europe. Now, Europe is a very densely populated area. I mean, because it's an old area. I mean, it's ancient. It's medieval cities. So there's a lot of cities there that have a lot of population compared to the United States and Canada. So it took a long time to populate that, and it also introduced the idea of adding ferry lines across water, because you have Ireland and England, or the UK are islands, and then you have some somewhat major islands in the Mediterranean, off of like France and Spain and Italy, and some other major inland waterways up by the the Baltic states and stuff. Or did I say that right? The Baltic? No, the Scandinavian area. So some improved pathfinding was added at this point too, for when you're traveling around the map, and it made things more accurate. And of course, I had to add airplane flights for traveling, no longer just driving around everywhere, because the only way to get from Europe to the United States and Canada is by flying. And we weren't gonna worry about like taking boats and taking like weeks or months to get somewhere. So it's all flights, which also introduced private jets. So here's a new thing that you can spend all that money on that you're earning. You don't know what to spend on later on. So speaking of money, and this is just kind of a funny note, I had one player that was telling me he had over $2 billion, and then all of a sudden he had negative money. I said, what? So he exports the save game, sends it to me. I already had a hunch of what this was, and I was right. It's a 32-bit integer variable only goes up to 2,147,483,647. And if you add to that, it wraps it around to the negative version of that. It starts going back up again. So I had to convert internally in the code from using normal 32-bit integers to 64-bit integers to track how much money you have. I really didn't expect people to have over $2 billion in the bank, but it happened. In January was the first pre-live release of the Attitudes and Expansion, and this was the first time that I used the pre-live stage for an update instead of just putting it out there, because I knew this was way too big, needed a lot more testing before I could commit to putting it out there for everybody. And a lot of players in the community were very interested in getting on there and playing it, even though it required starting a new band. I wasn't allowing existing bands to be loaded into this right away because I didn't want to screw up people's games with bad save data and stuff like that. I would have a lot of people mad at me for that. During this update, I also split the songwriting skill into music writing and lyrics writing, so it brought the skill count to 7 instead of 6, which meant I could increase the level cap from 30 to 50. A lot of people have been requesting raising the level cap because they've been hitting it really early in the game. At the same time of raising the level cap, I changed the experience curve so that leveling up early in the game up to like level 20 happened faster, but then after that, from 20 to 50, it took a lot more experience to level up each time. And then I added difficulty as a stat to song ideas and songs, which made the playing skill more valuable. So a lot of people kind of wondered about that, though. They said, well, why would I want to make difficult songs if all it does is require me to have higher playing skills? And this was kind of a long-term plan that I knew already was eventually the difficulty was going to play into awards. And that came later, but this is the start of that idea. On February 1st, this big update was released for everyone. And at the same time, I updated the project from Unity 2018 to Unity 2020. And for the most part, it went smooth. There's always a big concern whenever you do a major Unity update because a lot of compatibility issues and things break that you don't expect. And it seemed like it was surprisingly smooth, but I started having issues with the Mac version of the game on Steam. The local builds for the Mac version would run perfectly fine, but as soon as I put it on Steam and then downloaded it through Steam, it wouldn't run. So I had to I started contacting Steam support because I thought it was a Steam thing, because if it worked locally but not on Steam, it must be a Steam thing, right? So opened up that line of communication. On February 2nd, Colonel Failure posts his first playing of Rising Star 2 on his YouTube channel, which began a large influx of interest in the game from players. I started seeing a lot of new players showing up in Discord and in the forums, saying, "Oh, Colonel Failure sent me here." And I was like, "Who's Colonel Failure?" So I had to look him up. and he's pretty entertaining. So check out his channel. February 10th, I solved the Mac issue that I was just talking about. So this took 9 days, almost 2 weeks. And it turned out to be some combination of a Unity change for Unity 2020 and how Steam handles executables. Now, so since there was Unity as part of this, I got a hold of Unity support and then Steam support, and I kind of got them in touch with each other. I assumed that Unity and Steam as companies are in communication a lot already, because many games on Steam are written in Unity. So you would think that they would have an open line of communication at a technical level, if not a business point. So it was kind of funny though, because Unity and Steam were pointing fingers at each other, saying it's their fault, it's their fault. But in the meantime, I figured out a workaround to get it working again. It's pretty hacky, but it works. And I don't know if they're ever going to fix it for real. February 10th, 2021, I added some colorblind friendliness to the UI. Some players who are colorblind suggested making some changes, because I use a lot of colors like red and green and yellow in the middle, to show positive and negative effects of things, right? But colorblind people can't really tell the difference between red and green a lot, or amber. So I started using icons, numbers, and other techniques like line thickness to indicate the status of different things. And I also started, a lot of people started reporting where the soundtrack would play 2 songs at the same time, particularly when finishing a gig. Whether you're watching a gig, playing a gig, didn't really matter. Two soundtrack songs would be playing at the same time afterwards. And that was a tough thing to try to troubleshoot, because I could never get it to happen on my own. And it seemed like, I guess, it started happening after playing for hours and hours in the game. And I don't usually play for hours and hours myself, because I'm usually working on it, work a little bit, stop it, do some work, play it, stop it, etc. On February 23rd, by popular demand, I released an update where the musicians no longer quit in the middle of the tour. So if the musicians are unhappy for various reasons, they'll no longer quit in the middle of the tour, because that just ruined the tour. It was just a disaster for the tour, because all of a sudden your practice skill, your playing skill of all your songs is cut down. And it's even worse if you get a replacement. You have to re-practice all your songs, but you're already committed to all these gigs, and then you get bad responses. So now somebody will indicate that they're not happy and they're going to quit at the end of the tour. And that's what happens unless you make them happy again before the end of the tour. So it's not as much of an issue now anyway, since the attitude changes, because now the relationship between musicians in the band can pretty much be engineered the way you want it to, by making all their attitudes compatible with each other. On February 26th, after several months of troubleshooting, I finally found the fix for the false van rollover bug. And it's kind of hacky also, but and it's directly related to the physics engine in Unity, because the van control uses the physics engine because of collisions and stuff like that. So it's just kind of a weird thing when you leave whatever screen you're in, you go back to the city view. The van is sitting on the ground, but sometimes there's a lag when it's going back to that view while things in Unity are loading or unloading in memory. But the physics engine continues running in real time. Doesn't care about that lag. So the van would fall through the ground, so it's no longer colliding with the ground, and then just be falling into space. So I had to do kind of, hacky workaround things, like pick the van up a little bit off the ground, and then, wait wait until the player starts pressing the key to drive before it starts calculating physics again, like turn the physics engine off until they start driving. Weird things. Kind of frustrating, but finally got it. On March 2nd, this is kind of an interesting thing. There was some chatting going on in the Discord channel about who are those 3 musicians on the cover art. And I know I designed the cover art conceptually, and then I had an artist paint it. It's based on 3 real musicians, but I wanted them to not be exactly like those musicians, but just kind of resemble them, not actually be them. And people pretty much figured out the girl singer and the bass player. The bass player is really obvious, but nobody could figure out who the guitar player was. And I realized that the reason why nobody could figure out who the guitar player was is because in the artwork, he looked like a white guy, but in reality, he's supposed to be a black guy. So once I gave that hint, people figured it out eventually. But I realized I need to darken the skin tone on that cover art. It's just not right. It looks like there's 3 white people and there's supposed to be a black guy. I think, and I looked at the original image, the photograph that was based on, and the skin does look really light in that photo because of the lighting from the stage lighting shining on him, and the angle and the shine and everything looks really light skinned. So that's how the artist painted it. So it's supposed to be based on Prince, but nobody could guess that because the skin was too light. I mean, Prince is kind of a light-skinned black guy, I guess, which just made it, even lighter when the lights shined on him from the stage. On March 5th, I added the ability for keyboard players to busk. A lot of keyboard players were bummed out that they were left out from the busking. And that was just a technical issue because I had to create a special keyboard, that worked in the park for the busking thing. And so I finally did that, and it works fine. On March 13th, I added grid snapping when positioning the wall decor. A lot of people like to line up their awards and guitars and stuff like that perfectly on the wall, but it was really hard to get them just perfect. And it was also easy to accidentally move them because as soon as you right clicked on it to go into the movement mode, they would just jump to wherever your mouse was, which was not really a good idea either. So not only is grid snapping on, but when you right click it to go into the edit mode, they're still locked in place until you uncheck a box to be able to move it around, and then hit return or click the button on the screen to lock it in. So much better control over positioning things on the wall. March 14th, I did more work to prevent multiple songs from playing at the same time in the soundtrack. I don't know if I got it solved yet, but maybe. March 19th, I added some. This was just for fun. We were chatting in the Discord channel about the background sounds in the music store. How there's just like a lot of really bad playing, of instruments in the background sound, and it sounds like a real music store. You hear a lot of that in real music stores. You go in there. So a couple of players who play guitar for real were interested in contributing some badly played music, and I said, play it left-handed. If you're right-handed, play it left-handed, and play it to your best of your ability like that. Or something like that. So I got some contributions from a few players, so that was fun. On April 13th, 2021, added the annual Shady Awards as a feature. Now this is a major new feature, and this goes back to what I was talking about with the difficulty being added to songs. In order to get nominated for a Shady Award, you have to have songs that are high difficulty, high skill, high quality, just high across the board, except for popularity. Doesn't have to be popular at all. So it adds a new way to play the game, so you don't have to have popular songs to be successful in one area, or you can just have popular songs and be, commercially successful but not get any awards, or try to do both, which is even more challenging. Added the ability to develop song ideas by combining two of the same kind of ideas into a new idea that is better than the original ones were. So this was a way to also improve the usefulness of the production skill, because the production skill ties into how many ideas you can combine each day. And I also wanted to make it so that writing high quality songs was more of a process and took a longer period of time, instead of like, oh, okay, we just generated, a bunch of 25 or 30 point ideas, they fit together, now instantly you have an amazing song. I wanted it to be more like, okay, more in real life, you just have a bunch of raw ideas, and you have to work on those ideas and make them better. Maybe you have a couple ideas, you put them together, you get a better idea, and so on. And it might take a month or multiple months, several months, before you finally have, 3 or 4 ideas that are worth actually putting into a song together and then finishing the song. That was the idea behind that. Now, there's been some debate whether that now makes it actually too easy to make high quality songs, because you can just keep combining them until you get all the high point ideas. But the idea was that, a lot of people complain that there's a 1 year waiting period between releasing CDs on contracts. The labels don't want you to release one within a year of a previous one. So there was a lot of time in between. Like, what do? I already have like 3 albums worth of material ready to go. Well, that's because it was too easy to write songs too fast. Part of the idea was to slow down that songwriting period and make it harder to get. Sure, you might be able to get a couple of songs that are like 100 point quality in that time, but it takes so long to do it that it makes it more challenging and fills up that time in between albums more full, so that you have things to do while you're working on that. So you're hopefully thinking like, oh no, the deadline's coming up, instead of, oh my God, when's the release date gonna get here? So that's the idea. And also, as part of that, added the ability to salvage song ideas from songs that haven't been recorded. So it's kind of a way to bank ideas in a different kind of way. So maybe you have a really good idea for like a riff, but you don't have other ideas that fit that with the puzzle pieces. So you just put it together with whatever it does fit in. And now you have that kind of stored until you find other ones that you might want to tear that song apart and use that riff for some other better ideas. And the random song title generator was added at the same time. Now this was, I don't have it in here, but this might have been around the same time that the lyrics generator was added. That was TheseLyricsDoNotExist.com. I was doing some research on like rhyming word dictionaries and things like that, and I was thinking about writing my own lyric generator, and then I came across that website, TheseLyricsDoNotExist.com, where he actually uses AI on the server, which has learned a bunch of lyrics, a bunch of actual lyrics from different songs, and then you can tell it like different attitudes and energy levels or whatever, and in topics, and it just thinks for a few seconds and gives you this amazing lyrics that sometimes are just like hilarious, and sometimes they're just wrong. Sometimes they're dark. Depends on what kind of subject matter you put into it. But it's pretty amazing. It's a lot of fun. And the author of TheseLyricsDoNotExist.com's website, who's done all that, he's been super supportive. I asked him if I could integrate it into the game, and he's been super supportive. So definitely gotta, if you go to that website and just use it directly, send him a message or whatever and tell him tell them I sent you. Tell them, thanks for letting me use it in the game. On April 19th, 2021, added version history dialog within the game with links to watch related videos. I always like to make sure that whenever a new version comes out, I post the change log so everybody can see it, whether it's in the Discord channel, on I don't do everyone on Steam forums, but if it's a kind of a major one with a video, I always put it on the Steam forums too. But I thought it would be way easier for everybody who plays the game to access the changelog and the videos if I put it in the game. So that's what I did. On April 24th, Colonel Failure posted an interview he did with me on his YouTube channel. I think the interview itself was a few days before that, maybe 5 days before that. So that was really cool of him to do that. Like I said before, I got a lot of new players coming in saying that they heard about the game from Colonel Failure. And so I had to go check out Colonel Failure, and I contacted him and said, hey, do you ever do developer interviews? Because a lot of the players are coming from you, so I feel like they would be interested in hearing about the game. And he said, yep. So we did that, and we appreciate it. Colonel Failure, thanks a lot. May 3rd, I added the ability, or added support for PNG files with transparency when importing images into your photo album in the game. The images in your photo album can be used in the graphic designers, like your banner designer, CD cover designer, and a lot of people wanted to be able to have transparency and stuff. So I finally added that. And then on May 6th, 3 days later, I added additive blend option and ability to flip them. And the ability, this was kind of a popular request by players, added the ability to tag songs. Now, the ability to tag songs was kind of a general request, and people had suggested different ways to handle this. I decided to do it with icons rather than words, because one, icons take up a lot less space on the screen, but can mean anything you want them to mean. So I added initially, I think, like 10 icons, 8 or 10 icons, and then people liked it so much that they were requesting more icons, so I added some more later on. On May 11th, I added energy and interest meters to the gig analysis that shows the audience interest level and energy level after each song that was played, so you can see how they adjusted over time, which might give you a little bit more insight on how to build your set lists in the future. On June 10th, finally, after a lot of player requests, added the t-shirt designer. Now, the t-shirt designer is something that I always wanted to do too, but it's another one of those things that represented a technical challenge because of the way the character system works. But I came up with a workaround, a technical workaround that has its limitations, and I'm going to go into detail on that on a different video, more of a technical video. And so now you can design up to 30 custom t-shirts for your band. And the cool thing about that is you can see people in the venues, in the bars, wearing your t-shirts when you're walking around in there. On June 15th, added the ability to rename locations. A lot of people wanted to kind of recreate their hometowns or their favorite, like, iconic locations within the cities, because the cities are, of course, randomly generated with random names and stuff like that. So now you can go and rename any location you want. This was also part of, a lot of people wanted to be able to rename their manager. So a manager is just technically a location in the game. So that just went along right with it. You can rename managers, theaters, shops, whatever. You could always rename your home, but now you can rename even homes that you don't own. So And I also added the option to disable the fog of war in cities. A lot of people just didn't like that you had to drive around the whole city to unlock seeing it all the locations. And I kind of agree, because it's not really supposed to be like an arcadey kind of game. So I added the option to make it so that all the locations just appear immediately. And I also fixed some compatibility issues on Mac M1 computers. And I think this is partly a Unity render pipeline issue. I'm using the default, or they call it the built-in render pipeline, because that's what the default was when I started the project. It may not be the best one to use now. I may have to look into that in the future. But there are some limitations for post-processing effects when using the built-in render pipeline on Macs. So I had to change some things. On July 25th, after a lot of popular demand also from players, added hats. This was not done for a long time, again, because of technical challenges. Particularly, if you have hair and you put a hat on, the polygons don't care. The hair is going to stick right out through the polygons of the hat. So I had to figure out how to make it so that hair wouldn't stick out through the hat. And I'm actually going to do another more technical video, probably as part of that UMA video, that shows how I ended up tackling that problem. On August 12th, 2021, today, Rising Star 2 turns 1 year old, and I went back and looked through the my change list and counted 82 updates since launch. 82 pushed updates to Steam since launch in 1 year. That's more than one a week on average. There's currently about 6,000 active wish lists, active players on Steam that have this game in their wish list, which means there's about 6,000 people who have shown some interest in buying the game that haven't yet bought it. So I feel like that shows that there's still a good future for this game, and I'm going to continue developing. And also, as part of the celebration of 1 year, the game is on sale, 25% off for the next few days or so. So if you are one of those people with it on your wish list, now's a good time to get it. And even if you don't have it on your wish list and you haven't bought it yet, now's a good time. I guess on Steam you can buy gifts for people. If you have some friends that you think would love this game, buy it as a gift it to people. And I'm looking forward to a lot more development of features. There's a roadmap out there that I'm a little behind on, but a roadmap is always supposed to be a rough thing. But the biggest thing, the beginning of that roadmap, was getting some new clothing options, which I did, and hats, which is a whole new feature. And pretty soon I'm going to start adding some of those new features. Now there's some other big ideas in my head that I didn't dare put on the roadmap because I don't want to commit a timeline to them. But it'll probably be like another major update, kind of like the attitudes in Europe. Plus we need to expand into other countries. I really want to do, got a lot of requests for Australia, Japan, and South America. So, also I want to add Mexico. I think Mexico is going to be its own map just by itself. Mexico and like Central America. I just got to figure out how to get those in there without making the save game files so big that it's ridiculous. Because the more cities that are in the game, the more data is generated. So anyway, I want to thank everybody, especially the players that have spread the word, the streamers, people who are streaming the game, which helps get the word out there. Brito was one of the first ones. He was part of the beta testers, and he was streaming the game early on. And then of course Kernel Failure. It seems like a lot of the big streamers are from the UK. I don't know, but Speaking of that, I have players from all over the world. There's such a great player base from Poland, France, Germany, up in the like Sweden, and Finland, and Ireland. There's people from Australia, Brazil, all over the place. I mean, I can't even name all the countries, and I just love the fact that there's people from all over the world enjoying this game. So it really just keeps me motivated to keep working on it and adding things. Thanks again to the patrons, of course. Currently 42 patrons. If anybody's interested in joining that, I'll put the link down below in the description as well. And that really helps with buying new models and paying artists and voice actors and people that subcontracting that I have to pay to get things done. That helps offset those costs. I think that's about it. If anybody has any questions or just wants to say hi, join our Discord channel, and I'm on there every day, even more so than the Steam forums. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next update.